In 2017, 96 million people were affected by 381 disasters that were recorded globally. Half of them occurred in the Asia-Pacific region. Not all people are affected in the same way. Poor residents are most likely to be impacted negatively. Owing to their density and growing populations, urban areas and their residents are particularly vulnerable to flooding, earthquakes, droughts, conflict, epidemics, and other shocks. Disasters impact the economic well-being of the city by increasing expenses for rebuilding, causing disruptions and losses in businesses, basic services, and infrastructure, and adversely impacting the attractiveness of the city for investors. The Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction is the main global framework that sets out targets and goals until 2030 to prevent and reduce the losses from disasters. Target E of the framework, which aims to substantially increase the number of countries with national and local disaster risk reduction strategies by 2020, highlights in particular the role of local actors in achieving these goals. Local leaders are at the forefront of disaster management and risk reduction. The Making Cities Resilient campaign alone has already gathered commitments from over 4,000 cities to address their risk agendas locally and contribute to the achievement of the Sendai Framework. But we need to scale up and increase our efforts to address key bottlenecks to local action. Many local governments have developed innovative strategies to prevent and manage risks, and we have to share their lessons. Every global agenda must root beyond national governments, and local authorities must be empowered to contribute to the achievement of the Sendai Framework. Sendai is a city, and all cities are Sendai. We stand together to localize disaster risk reduction and resilience. Tell us your story.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this side event of the European Forum for Disaster Risk Reduction, titled Localizing the Sendai Framework through Training of Trainers and City-to-City Learning. My name is Juan Carlos Uribe. I'm a learning officer at United Cities and Local Governments, Uclg, and I will be moderating this session today. Please let me start with some technical announcements. This session will have interpretation into Portuguese. If you want to use the interpretation, you can go to the globe button in the bottom of your screen and select the English or Portuguese channel. During the second part of the session, we will have an intervention in Portuguese, in which most of you might want to select the English channel. For today's session, we will be introducing you to some of the tools that we have decided to design together with partners to localize the Sendai Framework and foster local action, and also how we are working with cities around the world to bring up cases, challenges, and lessons learned from the initiatives that local cities, local and regional governments are taking. We will introduce you to these methodologies and resources by our learning director, Sarah Hoflich. We will then start right away with an engaging game in which we want you to participate and reflect on how do you understand crisis management, preparation and recovery. And then we will have a panel discussion with representatives from Dortmund, the Canary Islands, and Mozambique, looking at specific cases of responses to crisis and preparation and what can we learn from them. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Sarah Hoflich, Director of UCLG's Learning Department, who will introduce us more to this, what do we mean by localizing the Sendai Framework, and what tools are available for you to use in this regard. Sarah.
Thank you very much, Juan Carlos, and the speakers, and also all those who participate today in this event. It's a pleasure for us. UCLG is the largest network. We are the association also of associations. So we as an organization look at the role of local governments in global agendas, in global policy making. And today, as Juan Carlos announced, I will give you a little bit of insight why we are localizing the Sendai framework. So I will share my screen. I hope it works. Just my computer is a little bit slow. Okay, here we go. Yes, as I said, so our membership, those who know UCLG, United Cities and Local Governments, spans from local government, municipalities. In Portugal, we have many, the regional governments and subnational governments, and also local government associations. So this means we really cover the world of local government and of local response. And of course, the Sendai framework for us is very important. It is one of the first frameworks that has considered local governments as important agents and as important actors in resilience and in disaster prevention and reduction. So in particular, the target E is for us, was celebrated as a success of our advocacy work, because as it's now probably well known that local governments are usually the ones who respond first, who are the address. Everybody runs to the mayor in the moment of a disaster. They need to coordinate, but we of course have a lot of management challenges. We will see later in our presentations of other levels of government too, but the local governments are in particular exposed to the immediate communication with the citizens. So we call this process localizing, because we have global agendas that are globally agreed on, that are hosted and committed by the nations through the United Nations. And we have, of course, a local government are not officially part of the United Nations, but every time more, we are heard, we are respected, we are considered. And of course, this will later then translate in better governance and in more funding and in more possibilities. So our learning agenda is looking in particular to help local governments to understand the global agenda, to connect to these agendas, and also to exchange on the lessons learned, because local governments usually are the ones who really are full of knowledge, and this knowledge is very valuable for everybody, for networks, for academics, for volunteers, for all those who consider resilience building and disaster risk reduction important. So here is another piece. This is a MCR. I think this is well known to all those who attend this event. But of course, we are committed to the campaign. Our Secretary General is co-chair to this campaign, and we really are very happy that this global campaign is working very horizontally with all the networks and also with all actors that are committed to resilience building. Our contribution to this bigger effort of MCR is a set of training modules and a set of facilitator guiding for resilience building. We are now, of course, in a very particular moment with the pandemic. We have been listening to our local governments, to our leaders over 1.5 years now, and we have seen the immediate response, the emergency response is different. This shakes the whole governance system, the whole way of doing, the way of operating, the way of coordinating is different, and the resilience and the building back better have become a concept that everybody want to understand, is applying and want to connect on. So we have gathered this knowledge in 2 learning modules. The first one is the fundamentals of resilient governance and development, and the second one is the resilience learning module on strategies and action. And these modules are extremely playful because they are made for practitioners that have a lot of work, that are usually in their local government's desk, that they have to have really a lot to do. So the way of engagement is really very playful, and we will give you a little insight with later on. I also would like to thank here the authors. We have one of our authors with us, Borja Iglesias, and he, together with Ebru Genser, have been really doing an immense work to get all the knowledge of our members into methodology, to really read it and to do the academic work inspired by the practical works. This is how currently a training of trainers look like. Unfortunately, we are totally captured in virtual environment, but of course also this is possible, and we have incredible response and demands from all over the world. Here you can see one of the events we did in Seoul. We just recognized because of the faces, but we have gone we have done resilience trainings of trainers in Africa, in Latin America, in all the continents, in Middle East. And we have seen, we have now a bunch of 800 facilitators that are engaging their members if they are associations, or their colleagues if they are working in local government, or their students if they work in academic field. All this work is very related to the peer learning we are famous for. Uclg is working since 10 years on very solid peer learning methodologies, also adult education methodologies that allow our members to exchange on their practices. And it allows us to learn from members. So how members are working, what they are doing. We gather this in these notes, and the practices also we put on many, many platforms. And we are very happy that academic sector is using this more and more, and with this engages, understands local government, and also learns from the practice. So here are 3 examples. The first one is learning we did in Asia, in Indonesia actually, and of course there the Sendai framework became now a governance approach, and many, many local governments are into resilience building and into Sendai framework. We have another example here of Niteroi on climate resilience and urban development. And finally, on urban resilience and sustainability of San Jose, Costa Rica, where we were gathering all the Caribbean members that have very particular challenges to build resilience. And we learned a lot of lessons with them. Of course, these lessons are enriched because we work with United Nations. So our main partners here is UNDRR, the Getty, and we do also engage usually with them if we do trainings. And we also have UN Habitat Resilience program that is hosted in Barcelona as well, and they have done a resilience profiling methodology. We also consider, so our module and our work is really trying to gather, to open many doors to knowledge, to access what others are doing, to enable networks, to meet colleagues, and to learn interactively. And the final slide here is a little overview what is also possible for you, that you are now only here an hour with us, but you can of course connect in learning with Uclg. There we have a bunch of online offers for self-paced learning, and we also announce there live discussions, practice listening and gathering as we have today. And if you want to learn more and connect with us, please don't hesitate to visit us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for that introduction to a wide range of work and lines of work that UCLG has. Now, we would like to invite you to engage now in one of the dynamics of the second module on strategies and actions. Particularly on the chapter number 5, which looks at preparation, recovery, and building back better. So for this, we will be dividing ourselves in 4 groups. Each group will have 1 facilitator. And the idea is to look at what a city or local or regional government needs to do to prepare and respond to a specific hazard. So your facilitator will guide you through this exercise. I do invite you. Usually these sessions are more about listening, but for the next 20 minutes, I do want you to engage, speak, open your mics, participate in the activity, in which we will be asking you where you will put different actions in this timeline between preparation, shock, and response. The first group will remain here in the main room. So for those who speak Portuguese, please remain here. And then we will have 3 breakout rooms that you can choose from. So once we open the rooms, select any of the breakout rooms, and there you will have one facilitator. We will have Fernando Santomauro from the UCLG Learning team in the main room, who will be speaking Portuguese and English with the ones who stay here. I will be going to the breakout room. Sarah Hoflich will be going to the second breakout room, and then Simone Giovetti from City France and one of the coordinators of Solidarity Fund and a global task force on crisis management of UCLG that we will be introducing later on in the panel discussion will be in group number 3. So you will have 15 minutes for this exercise, and then we come back and share some of your reflections. So choose your number, and we come back here in, actually, let's say 20 minutes for the technical team. So let's open the breakout rooms for 20 minutes and then come back. I know it was a very quick process, and it was difficult because we kind of jump into it without having a lecture about what we were talking about, preparation and response. But we wanted to let you see this type of methodologies, which are part of the learning module, to help bring the knowledge from participants themselves. So the training of trainers are, as Sarah was saying, built on city-to-city learning, and we've given a lot of efforts of designing these kind of methodologies where we share the general concepts, but we actually learn from the experience of participants and cities, like we will be doing after this in the panel discussion. But before going into the panel discussion, I would like to invite someone from each group to share some of the key reflections that you had. I would like to actually start with Osita Kingsley, who just put a comment in the chat. I don't know which group you were in, but if you want to share a little bit more about what you're mentioning in the chat, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I joined when the breakout session has been created. So I joined from Ruhr University, Germany, Bochum. So I am currently studying international humanitarian action, and I have interest in disaster planning and intervention. So my interest has been on how to include gender and disability in intervention designing, at least to reduce the rate of risk and the evacuation processes. So the little I got is so interesting to me. So I didn't join. I don't think if I joined any breakout room, but the much I got, yeah, I saw some people presenting, so I got the little from there. So it kind of when to prepare for food, like storing food, or before the intervention or during the intervention. But I was suggesting that it's a kind of a continuous process. You have a few like to get ready ahead of time and during the process. So I was thinking is a kind of continuous process. So have some before and still some during the process to facilitate the activities of maybe assisting people to recover from the shock. So I'm glad to be part of the program.
Thank you very much, Tita. And yeah, I think that was something that maybe other groups reflected. I don't know if a group, Ciro, Fernando, if anyone from your group would like to share some reflections or yourself of what was highlighted.
Yes, well, we have chosen the sixth generation fire, and Nuno was explaining what was all about, and I think Luis could could comment generally what we were discussing about the actions. I think if Luis can explain, I think it would be great because he was just ending commenting on that. Luis.
Yes, yes.
E pode falar em português, Luis, porque também temos tradução.
Ok. Eu agora estava perdido, estava aqui a tratar de outras coisas. Não sei, peço desculpa. Qual é a questão?
Não, só para você comentar um pouco sobre o que você estava falando no grupo, sobre todas as alternativas de ação e como no geral elas se colocavam por aí, né, diante do risco, do choque.
Sim, estamos a falar da questão estávamos há pouquinho a falar nisso, que a gente acaba por concluir, obviamente, no chamado famoso ciclo de emergência, não é? Porque aqui nunca há sectores estanques, não é? Portanto, há aqui obviamente há sempre uma dualidade, né? Portanto, há sempre uma totalidade, o que for a recuperação também, há uma parte muito importante do ciclo de emergência que podíamos falar mais para a frente, não é? Que muitas vezes é negligenciado, não é? Portanto, não há aqui algo estanque. Isto é sempre algo dinâmico e que muitas vezes, cá está, é o tal ciclo dá a volta, não é? Portanto, não há muito para onde fugir. São poucas as ações, pelo menos assim, da minha experiência, daquilo que neste momento posso me lembrar, que sejam estanques, não é? O planeamento tem, obviamente, o próprio planeamento, que em princípio será a montante do evento, não é? Também tem que ser depois revisto na fase de recuperação e na fase a seguir. Portanto, é tudo dinâmico. Acho que aqui não podemos estabelecer aqui esta dualidade muito marcada, não é? Antes e depois. Não há. Há uma continuidade que tem que ser assegurada e penso que é por aí que se deve caminhar. Mas isso, como se diz os outros, é a minha opinião.
Thank you very much, Luis. Yeah, I think that's part of the title of the dynamic of Beyond the Timeline. It's one big part that we wanna look into. So yeah, it was a way of reflecting on how do we force people to think and reflect about this. Very nice reflection. Let me see if group number 2, Sarah, is there anyone in your group who would like to share some insights?
Michelle, go ahead.
Sure. Okay. I just want to comment on the fact that the activity was very interesting, although we had a little time to place the different action cards in the before and after. And from what went on, it was relatively easy, in my opinion, and the group relatively easily placed the different action cards in the preparation or the response phase. Then I don't know if we really did everything correctly, but anyway, it was quite straightforward to decide. Then the order of the different activities in the preparation phase or in the response phase, we focus more on the response phase, was object of debate. And actually there was a comment, I don't remember who did it, but a comment that some of these actions could be placed in parallel rather than strictly in a sequential order. And then, there was also an issue about shock specific versus this general disaster actions. We had fire as a shock, but then some of the things that we were thinking, I personally was thinking, generally speaking, about disasters when I was thinking where to place things rather than the specific hazard or shock event, or however you want to call it. So this is also important to highlight. What else? We were looking at the Joker cards when we were cut off from the exercise. So there was something specific that we were trying to put, but then the time was over.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Yeah, I think what you mentioned of, this understanding what hazards is a city exposed to and defining those strategies based on that is important, but also as it has seen more often, like in the recent years, there is a combination of hazards that can go and cascade into each other and creating disasters that we don't necessarily think about or are prepared to. So having those models also in terms of different multiple hazards, it's also important, while also identifying the most important that the city is exposed to. Let me see if in group number 3, Simone, is there anyone who wants to share from you or for yourself?
Yeah, it's somebody from my group who wants to take the floor, and then maybe I will complete. Sorry, I didn't write down the name. It was a short time to notice. Please, if somebody from my group wants to share. Nobody? So very shortly, but please complete, I think 3 points that were mentioned that for me are very important. Some of the cards were put on the middle, so neither on the left or right side, because the process were important for the preparation and for the response. For instance, risk assessment, multi-sectorial analysis, and security and food, health and supply chain. We choose flooding situation. So those three, this choice was made because, in fact, a good knowledge about territory and good assessment can be done before, and it will be better prepared the local authority to respond. But of course, local authority should play a role on also assess the situation after a crisis, no? To choose the good project for rehabilitation. The same are the other 2 cards. Another point on the Joker cards, I think the 2 elements were shared that are important, that maybe learning department should add already on the possibility. The data sharing and the coordination for the response are something that are key, and a lack of those elements when there is a response action that often is coming from actors that are outside the local authority. So there is a lack of coordination with among other actors, NGOs, UN agency, for instance, and there is a lack of sharing data that are collected by those actors with the local authorities. So for us, it's on the group, at least those 2 points were really chosen as a Joker cards for the response.
Thank you very much.
Contingency plan, sorry, the last one was also added on the timeline for the preparation. Local authorities should have it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Simone. And I think, yeah, the issue of data sharing, coordination, working with different actors is very important, and something that is raised more from in the module 1 on risk assessment and risk governance, resilience governance. But yeah, like those 12 action cards are just a small selection of the many things that local and regional governments should and many times are doing. In my group, I would like to invite Xiaoxia to share some reflections before we start with the panel discussion.
Yeah,
are you there?
It's my pleasure to share my reflections. I'm very impressed by this kind of game type practice. They give the opportunity at common people, if they have these tools, they can practice by themselves, make practice by themselves. So flooding, we are focusing on flooding hazard from preparation to disaster recovery. So I think that is a process of long-term and have recurrence from one-time hazard mitigation to preparation to next time hazard. So it's a learning process. It's the learning process. So I think our moderator let us have a very good practice. He will give more for each step, what we did and what all our consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sasha. So yeah, we hope you enjoyed the exercise. It's only one of the 4 that we've designed for the second module on strategies and actions. And there's a few more on the first module, so we do invite you to look at them. We will share that link in the chat later on, but now I want to give the floor to our panelists who are here with us to share us how a lot of what we've been discussing in this game is actually being done in the ground, and what we can learn from those specific responses and like adaptation to those changing environments and hazards. So we will have, as I was mentioning, representative from Dortmund, the Canary Islands, and Mozambique. And I would like to start by giving the floor to Dr. Sylvia Pratzler, Head of Research of the Dortmund Fire Department, Institute of Fire Service and Rescue Technology, who will share us some insights from the floods that affected a large part of Germany this year. Sylvia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
I hope so. Okay. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sylvia Pratzler, and I'm a scientific director and active firefighter at the Fire Department of Dortmund. And I would like to give you a short synopsis about the flood in July 2021 that occurred in Germany. So maybe starting with some facts. Most of you, especially in Europe, saw what flood occurred in Germany. It was quite a quite critical situation. We have a precipitation up to 200 liters per square meters, and the consequences were very tragic. We have 183 fatalities, more than 800 injured and badly injured people, and there is an estimated damages of about more than 10 billion euros. And if we take it into account, we can say that this is historically the most damaging natural disaster in Germany. There was a certain region affected. It was the North Rhine-Westphalia and the Rhineland-Palatinate, and here especially some cities like Hagen and Erftstadt. So I would like to show you some impact and what consequences were taken. So I think pictures after a flood are well known for us. So we don't need to go into more details because the pictures are commonly known. What makes it more crucial and more critical is that in this situation, we should not forget the actual situation of the coronavirus. So it was an additional risk for the affected people as well as the rescue unit. And so when we were talking about the rescue units, we have a lot of units that were deployed. In the first instance, of course, the fire departments. I don't know how far you are familiar with the German system, but the German system, the main pillar of the civil protection are the volunteer firefighters. We have about more than 1 million volunteer firefighters in comparison to 34,000 career firefighters. The benefit of the volunteer firefighters is that they are fast, widely distributed, and readily available. So when we are talking about the flood in the summer this year, about 90% of the rescue units were volunteers. Beside the fire departments, of course, we have other units like the Agency for Technical Relief, the police or the federal police, the Federal Office for Civil Protection and Disaster Assistance, the military, and also aid organizations. And the aid organizations are also voluntary units. They provided about up to 12,000 volunteers per day to support in the affected area. So, flash floods can occur everywhere and are quite not new. And this is also valid for Germany, but maybe not in this dimension. So please allow me heretical questions. Are the lessons that we've learned new? Of course not. So if we are going to take it into a kind of summary or nutshell, So we can say that there is a very clear need for reliable information. So reliable information without the risk of overload of information. So the question will be here, what is important, what is true? The next point concerns the clear and unambiguous communication, not only between the institutions, but also between the institutions and the population. This is very close connected to the next point, to the risk awareness and risk perception. So this concerns especially the population, because the question will be, is there an appropriate, for example, an appropriate interpretation of, for example, warning, or is it not taken as risky as it is? When we are talking about the technical aspects, it's quite important that there is a need for a certain amount and a certain quality of equipment, because if we are working or if we are facing floods, it is, for example, necessary that we have all-terrain vehicles. Otherwise, you cannot manage the flood, not the flood and also the aftermath of the flood. And last but not least, very important, we need clear structures and responsibilities. You know that during such a situation, we have a lot of players and a lot of institutions. So the question will be, who's responsible? Who will take the decision? As we act on the local level, is the local level the right level? Do we need support from other levels? And we have to also to think more global or more superordinate. We need an adaptive and forward-looking spatial planning to prevent or to reduce the outcomes of flood, the negative outcomes. Like, for example, to keep free high-risk areas or flood-prone areas, or some regulation concerning existing buildings. So when we are going to look into future, what are the next steps the German government took? There was an extensive structural analysis done, and this is still in progress. The main question will be, what should we expect due to climate change, and how should we be prepared? And so the main objective was to improve the civil protection system of Germany for coping with long-lasting and complex events. There are a lot of aspects that will be relevant, but I would like to catch up some crucial examples. Like, for example, it's important to have a strategy to strengthen the resilience to disasters. It means, for example, to focus also on health civil protection, or to establish a joint competence center for civil protection. Here, the focus is set on the transfer of knowledge and research into real environment. As mentioned before, concerning the risk perception, the improving of the warning system of the population. So the German system, or the German government, aims at expanding the siren system network, a very traditional thing, but very important. As mentioned before, the volunteers are a main pillar of the civil protection system in Germany. So nevertheless, they should be strengthened. And what is maybe on the first point not so obvious, we need a structured involvement on non-organized helpers and rescuers, or resources. Because you know that people are willing to help, but can hinder the work of us, of rescue units, with their impulsive actions. And so they do completely the opposite what has to be done. And so for us, it's really important how to put them in our structures, how to involve them in our structures, that they can support us and not to build a barrier. And I think this is the last, but maybe the most important point: be foresighted, plan and train before, because when an event occurs, it's not important if it's, for example, a fire or a flood. You have to be prepared, and if you plan and if you train before, the success is more obvious, and it's easier to reach than if you are not prepared. Okay, with this, I would like to close my short speech. I kept the 8 minutes. I thank you very much for your attention, and I hope I was able to give you a short overview about what happened and what the next steps of the German government concerning the flood event were. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Sylvia, and thank you very much for keeping on time. I know it's difficult to share so much, but we appreciate you sharing specifically the lessons learned and the steps forward. If anyone has questions, I will try to pick them up after the 3 presentations, so feel free to write them in the chat. I would probably, when we finish the presentations, would like to ask you, of those next steps, what do you see the role of local governments? Like you were talking about Germany in general. So within the multi-level governance system in Germany, what do you see these local governments can do, and what would remain a challenge in terms of the multi-level governance? So if you can think about it for when we come back. Meanwhile, I would like to go to our second presentation, which is going to be about the ongoing volcano eruption in La Palma in the Canary Islands, Spain. And for this, we're inviting Borja Iglesias, who is an urban planner and expert on intermediate cities, the co-founder of the Network for Strengthening the Informal City and the Agencia de Vertebración Urbana, and who, as Sarah was mentioning, is one of the co-authors of the second resilience learning module on strategies and actions, and has been helping us a lot on documenting different cases and looking at it from a local government perspective, what can be done in terms of resilience and disaster risk reduction. Borja, the floor is yours.
Hi everyone. Thanks a lot for inviting me to this event. And I start to share the screen. Okay. So, well, this panel will focus mainly on the most striking issues of the emergency management in these 2 months of volcanic activity. Well, it's by pure coincidence that today I can speak about La Palma and the volcanic emergency plan of Canary Island, the PVOLCA. In addition, I come from Canary Island. I have friends in La Palma who are having a hard time in these moments. I'm not a volcanologist or an expert in disaster, but I work like Juan Carlos says in urban planning. And in this panel, I will try to bring you key issues linking the future Building Back Better process to the emerging management and the land use planning. Well, by the moment, the main figures of the 67 days of volcanic activity are as follows. More than 1,000 hectares covered by the lava, with the island gaining 43 hectares to the sea. More than 1,400 buildings destroyed, more than 7,000 persons displaced, and 1 billion euro in damage. In these 2 months, risk management has been carried out through 5 key actors. The PVOLCA, que is the Volcanic Emerging Plan of the Canary Island, the Cabildo de La Palma, the island government in charge of managing and coordinating the daily implementation of PVOLCA, a scientific committee coordinated by the Directorate for Security and Emergencies of the Canary Island government, made up of representatives from the National Geographic Institute, the Higher Council for Scientific Research, and the Volcanologic Institute of the Canary Island in Volcano, and also in universities. The 4th is civil protection, police and army emergency units, and of course, citizenship. Well, the early warning system. La Palma is a small Canary Island of just over 80,000 inhabitants and 700 square kilometers, which 50 years earlier had its last volcanic eruption, the Neguía volcano, in the south of the island. A year before to the Cumbre Vieja eruption in Volcán, warned of an increase of the volcanic activity on La Palma. On 28 October 2020, a swarm with 28 seismic movements were identified. On 14th September 2021, the alarms bells ring. The seismic swarm has 700 low magnitude seismic movements and a strong earthquake is felt. The ground begins to deform. In the week before the eruption are detected 20,000 low-intensity earthquakes. During the 2020, the island government maintains the yellow alert and monitor the risks together with Volcano. The PEVOLCA is finally activated on 13 September, and the possible impact of the volcano begins to be managed. 3 days before the eruption, the activation of PEVOLCA mobilized the command staff in the first few hours. The technical director of the PEVOLCA is appointed and the evacuation of people is discussed. 2 days before, the PEVOLCA Scientific Council agrees to maintain the yellow alert. Municipalities activate their own municipal emergency plans, and PEVOLCA begins to review the evacuation plans for the populations. 1 day before, PEVOLCA begins to report imminent risk of volcanic eruption in different languages, English, German. Recommendations for the population are published in different mass media. The eruption seems imminent. The where is known, but not the when. Finally, on 19th September 2021, at 2 Canary Island time, the first eruption occurs and is captured in real time by the media, who begin to inform about devastation. Sorry, I need water. Two months of risk and uncertainty management. The Cumbre Vieja, first of all, the Cumbre Vieja eruption is far from being considered one of the most dangerous eruptions in recent times. Its impact lies in the place where it happens, an unurbanized and agricultural environment in a touristic region of the global north. Although the population of Canary Island has always lived with the close presence of a volcano, no one could have foreseen that it would fully affect the human settlements. On 19 September, PEVOLCA activates the red alert with the eruption. 50 persons with reduced mobility are evacuated from the nearest area of the eruption. 1 day later, PEVOLCA defines an exclusion radius of 2.5 kilometers from the mission center, and 5,000 people are evacuated as a prevention. Football fields are equipped. The President of Spain chairs the PEVOLCA steering committee. 5 days later, maritime exclusion perimeter is maintained at 2 nautical miles from the coast due to the risk of lava reaching the sea and generating toxic clouds. 2 weeks later, the Spanish cadastre gives the first data on the damage. 726 buildings are destroyed. In 2 weeks, the lava has occupied 420 hectares and has changed the morphology of the island with a lava delta of 36 hectares. 3 weeks later, the first information meeting is held for the population of the affected municipalities. The lava reached a cement factory, and PEVOLCA activates risk of gas emission, and the population is confined due to the poor quality of the air. 40 days later, the government of La Palma, on advice of PEVOLCA, launched a bus service to provide safe access to the volcano and guarantee a safe mobility. And 2 months later, lava has covered 1,053 hectares with a perimeter of 53 kilometers. 1,467 buildings are destroyed, 90% are houses. 2,000 people have lost their home and 7,000 have been evacuated. 66 kilometers of roads and 341 hectares of crops are destroyed. Well, the final comments, key aspects. Well, I think PEVOLCA is a robust management tool that has made it possible to monitor the changing context and maintain to inform to the people about the impact of the volcano in real time and fix recommendations. The birth of a volcano is an extraordinary event that has changed the surface and geomorphology of the island, and it has been broadcast live. Pevolca has drawn on information generated by Volcano, a world reference institute in the study of volcanoes. We had produced projections of lava flows to warn the possible population effect. The governance of an extraordinary risk episode has once again been led by the state and regional governments, an issue that highlights the vulnerability of local governments to face with similar episodes. The strengths, the citizen and the social fabric that is witnessing the destruction of their homes in slow motion, but maintain expectation of emerging strength from this traumatic experience. The territorial solidarity, especially of the neighboring island, which in the first moments activates a collection of furniture and belongings for displaced people, and the Canarian television, which has become the Pevolca's loudspeaker for keeping the population informed. This is important for the large number of elderly people who do not have access to social networks and keep them safely informed through their TV. Weakness. Political promises in the early days that are impossible to keep when the final impact of the devastation is not known. Even today, it's still common to hear promises of reconstruction and allocation of European funds without knowing the final impact. The irresponsible behavior of the media in creating a spectacle of the devastation and people who have skipped the recommendations to approach the volcano. Uncertainties.
Could you wrap up in 30 seconds?
Yes. Two questions. What will happen to not affect their neighboring land? And above all, what will happen to municipalities where all the territory is now lava and there is no trace of human settlement? This is 76 days ago, and this is today. Thanks a lot.
You finished with a big question. Thank you very much for sharing. And it's good to see how it's different from what even us in Spain see in the media. So I think the issue that we raised on communication and looking at the plan from before the eruption and what was being done in terms of gathering data, the early warning system and how it started even before it started the eruption. It's quite interesting. Also in terms of the communication in different languages in a community that's quite diverse, that is not only local people, but as an island that is very dependent on tourism economy, how that affects also the plan and the response. If anyone has questions, again, you can put them on the chat, and I'm going to jump into the third and final presentation for today, which is going to look into one solidarity effort being led by the French Union of Cities, Cité Unie France, represented by Simone, as I was mentioning, and which is part of Uclg's working group on crisis management and the prevention of crisis. For this, we are inviting Pedro Laiz, who is a Cooperation and International Relations Officer at the National Association of Municipalities of Mozambique, since the mayor of Tondo, where the project is being, what has been implemented, was unable to join us today because of other urgent commitments. Pedro, are you there?
Ok, eu vou desabilitar a minha câmera por causa dos dados, né? A minha internet aqui é um bocadinho fraca, então é para não ter problemas na hora de...
Yes.
Bom, certo. Bom, isso. Ok. Então, eu vou falar de uma iniciativa que está, digamos, em curso, né, que é fruto de uma colaboração, portanto, da Cité Unie France e da Uclg. Portanto, em 2019, desculpa, cerca de 2 anos, a região central da província de Moçambique, portanto, a província de Sofala em particular, foi atingida pelo ciclone Idai, portanto, atingiu cerca de 3, 4 províncias do norte, mas a mais atingida foi a província de Sofala, particularmente a cidade da Beira, que é a segunda maior cidade do país. Portanto, além de atingir esta cidade da Beira como cidade, atingiu também o município do Dondo, portanto, e umas outras 2 cidades. O município do Dondo tem mais ou menos 80.000 habitantes, portanto, também foi uma das cidades atingidas. Portanto, em termos de saldos desta tempestade, foram mais de 1.000 mortes provocadas, mais de 100.000 casas, portanto, completamente destruídas. Como podemos ver aqui, as casas são maioritariamente delas feitas de material, assim, digamos que precário. Portanto, depois disso, nós lançamos um alerta a nível assim, internacional dos nossos parceiros, portanto, para mobilizar apoio para as vítimas, portanto, deste ciclone que atingiu, portanto, o país. Portanto, de uma forma positiva, tivemos uma resposta, portanto, da Uclg, que depois nos conectou com a CITES Unifrance, e daí iniciamos comunicação. O Simone esteve cá na altura, já trocamos comunicação e estivemos cá, o Simone esteve cá, fomos junto ao terreno, no caso, as cidades da Beira e Dondo, que eram as maiores cidades atingidas, para fazermos uma avaliação daquilo que era necessário, em termos de necessidades, para o apoio que éramos precisos. Portanto, fomos ver as infraestruturas danificadas, quer na cidade da Beira, quer na cidade do Dondo. A cidade do Dondo tem uma grande parte da cidade, digamos que, é rural, digamos assim, em termos da sua composição. Portanto, daquilo que foi constatado, vimos que a cidade de Dondo era uma cidade pequena e recebia poucos apoios em relação à cidade da Beira, e foi decidido que, portanto, este apoio ficaria para a cidade de Dondo. Portanto, depois nasceu daí o projeto de apoio à resiliência, portanto, no município de Dondo, que tinha essencialmente 2 componentes. Uma componente de sensibilização e capacitação, quer para as autoridades locais, estamos a falar das lideranças municipais, quer para as lideranças dos bairros. O que fomos perceber é que os municípios, particularmente o município de Dondo, ainda não tinha nenhuma ferramenta de resposta imediata. Portanto, os municípios, o município de Dondo, no caso em particular, foi a primeira entidade a responder a esta situação. No entanto, não tinha ferramentas. Então, a ideia era fazer essa capacitação e sensibilização sobre essa questão de prevenção ou gestão destas emergências. Foi um fenômeno ímpar, não tinha acontecido algo do gênero, então apanhou toda a gente de choque desprevenido, digamos assim. E a segunda componente era a questão do reforço da resiliência urbana. Nesta componente, a ideia era desenvolver modelos de infraestruturas resilientes a esses eventos climáticos, a choques, particularmente às cheias e ventos da magnitude que tivemos no ciclone Idai. Portanto, os ventos atingiram mais ou menos os 170, 220 km por hora, e para construções do tipo que há naquela zona, nenhuma casa ia resistir. Portanto, em termos de objetivos, eram mais ou menos este: apoiar as comunidades no reassentamento e reconstruindo as suas casas de maneira resiliente a partir do material local. Bom, nós prevíamos que essa construção das casas devia ser através de material local. Significa casas feitas de barro, paus. No entanto, a autoridade nacional, o governo, acabou dando diretivas sobre a construção de casas resilientes. Portanto, o que foi feito neste âmbito foi fazer consultas às comunidades para os beneficiários, né, destas novas casas que íamos fazer, e consultar os modelos que nós vamos fazer. Então, o que aconteceu? Esta casa, sim, que estamos a ver aqui, convencional, é um dos modelos concebidos pelo governo das casas resilientes. Portanto, ao invés de usarmos as casas feitas dos materiais locais, optamos por fazer as casas modelos já existentes de material, portanto, convencional. E a ideia é que estas mesmas casas fossem replicadas sejam replicadas neste mesmo município, porque os custos delas são casas resilientes, sim, mas o custo é relativamente baixo comparando com outro tipo de construções normais. Bom, em termos de atividades, nós fomos ao Dondo, ao local do reassentamento, e reunimos com as comunidades para que elas próprias, as comunidades e as autoridades dos municípios, para que primeiro se apropriassem desta iniciativa. Portanto, a iniciativa não era simplesmente só da ANAMO, da Cités Unidas, da CILZE, mas também que a iniciativa fosse do próprio município. E, por outro lado, fomos ter com as comunidades para que elas mesmas também soubessem, portanto, o que estava a acontecer, o que ia acontecer e quem elas é que acham na comunidade que deviam ser as pessoas prioritárias para se beneficiarem, portanto, destas novas infraestruturas, dessas casas melhoradas. Portanto, olhamos aqui uma senhora que está vestida de capelana do nosso lado direito, foi uma das beneficiárias desses mesmos casos, foi uma das escolhidas, portanto, e houve uma série de critérios. Ela, por exemplo, é uma idosa já, chefe de cerca de 6 agregados, tem sob sua tutela praticamente menores. Então, este foi um dos critérios, além disso. Portanto, e o processo de construção foi avançando e, no fim do dia, a senhora teve uma casa, que é esta aqui, né? Uma casa melhorada, resiliente acima de tudo. E uma das questões que nós garantimos é que esta mesma propriedade agora, que ela tenha direito de uso. Uma questão muito crucial aqui em termos de propriedade é a questão do direito de uso. E a ideia era garantir que no futuro próximo não venha nenhuma autoridade, ninguém mais, portanto, que lhe desaproprie a casa. Portanto, ela já tem todos os documentos que comprovam que a casa, portanto, é dela. Portanto, nós conseguimos fazer 3 casas modelos deste tipo para 3 beneficiários diferentes, né, no município de Dondo, na zona de reassentamento. E uma questão muito importante a realçar é que, a partir deste modelo que nós construímos, as outras agências que apareceram nesta zona de reassentamento acabaram usando exatamente o modelo que nós fomos construindo. Assim, foi um dos primeiros modelos a ser construídos nesta zona e hoje já podemos contar com mais modelos deste tipo. Portanto, nós fomos, vamos dizer assim, como que os pioneiros, né, através dessa iniciativa da Cités Unidas, do financiamento da Cités Unidas, a iniciativa da Uclg, nesta resposta, portanto, particularmente nesta componente de reconstrução resiliente. E, digamos assim. E nós prevíamos que esta
Pedro, could you wrap up in 30 seconds?
Ok, 30 seconds, ok. Então, no meio dessa iniciativa foi surgindo outra ideia e daí que surgiu a iniciativa de construirmos um centro comunitário. Portanto, o centro comunitário, este é o projeto e já está em curso, esperamos que até o fim deste ano termine. A ideia do centro comunitário é que o mesmo sirva também para abrigar as populações em termos de crises externas. Portanto, e esperamos que as comunidades, acima de tudo, consigam ter essas ferramentas de prevenção e mecanismos, portanto, de prevenção e redução do risco de desastre, porque ainda é uma questão muito crucial para essas respostas. E a mobilização de recursos, sobretudo na componente de capacitação, que é extremamente fundamental. A capacitação achamos que era fundamental. Portanto, para não passar mais o tempo, eu acho que é um pouco disto que queria partilhar daquilo que está a acontecer no município de Dondo, fruto, portanto, desta cooperação, né, através da Uclg e particularmente da Cités Unidas, que é a financiadora desta iniciativa no Dondo. Obrigado.
Thank you very much, Pedro. It's very interesting, and I think I would like to give the floor for 1 or 2 minutes to Simone, if you're there, to explain a little bit more about kind of the purpose of this Solidarity Fund and also this capacity building aspect of it in terms of city-to-city learning.
Yeah. I'm here. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you very much. So thank you, Pedro, here for the presentation, and we are very happy to see the projects that are done, and the last one that is in processing we hope will be finalized by the end of the year. And we did it with a very small amount of money. So I would like really to say that even with the 50,000 euro, we can really change the face and the life of a village. And I'm really proud of this initiative. This initiative in line with what we are trying to push at the UCLG level now, that we have now a new tool that is International Solidarity Fund. Why we did build this tool? Because we would like to show that there is a component that was missing on the process of help and rehabilitation when crisis occur. That is, in fact, the major role of local authorities to play. These funds and this kind of project intervene during the crisis, but there are really local authorities are really the protagonists of what they are needed for their own rehabilitation. So they choose with the community the kind of project that they want to develop, and they finally did it. Mozambique is one case, Indonesia is another one, Lebanon is currently ongoing a huge project for 2 years, and all the funds are coming from partners that are local authorities. So finally, I think we succeed to have a new element on the landscape of help rehabilitation, that is the peer-to-peer solidarity help directly to local authorities. Build Back Better is one component of the resilience Sendai framework. So we show that it's possible to do that directly with the local authorities that are putting on the not just their skills inside, but they are also try to put on board the local authorities on preparation, on learning, and we hope that is our small contribution to localize resilience in some place when a disaster occurs. And now Dondo is part of the network, is here to show the case, and it will be used also for the future. Thank you.
No, thank you, Simone. I think it's very important what you bring up of the role of local governments in those responses, and going beyond just the recovery, but building the capacity of the local governments in those regions to respond and manage those events. If Sylvia is still with us, I did wanted to go back to the question that I mentioned before on looking forward within that those lessons that you learn and path actions that have to be taken. What is the role of local governments that you see in terms of floods in Germany?
It's important to communicate and to cooperate with other communities and other actors, because the risks and the hazards don't stop on the administrative level or administrative borders. So it's important to agree on common crisis prevention plans, exercises, training, and exchange of knowledge.
Thank you very much. That was very concrete and very specific. And yeah, I know that you've also participated in peer learning with cities in Brazil a few years back. So I think this is very important, also like cities learning from each other. And I think in the case of Germany or Europe, before, I think DRR was something that was pushed by Asia Pacific local governments in our network. But we see that with climate change, the impacts of disasters are getting bigger, and even within Europe with fires, floods, the heat waves, there is a lot of urgency of learning how to respond to that as well. And there is something that European cities can learn from other regions as well. So thank you very much for sharing that. And in order not to delay everyone too much, although I'm really happy that we still have over 70 participants with us, I'm gonna give the floor to Sara to close this session.
Thank you very much, Juan Carlos. Very well done, this sequence and the moderation. And of course, a big thank you to our speakers. However, I think we could have the resilience agenda as we now see it has so many angles and so many perspectives that we could probably go endless, also because we have so many really, really professional participants. So it would be very nice to hear more from you, and don't worry to get in touch with us. Of course, UCLG, we always come back to this last question. What is the local government role and what is a challenge, and what do local government do good and what do they want to improve. And I think a very clear come out here of the exercise and also of the presentation. The importance is the communication. How do we communicate with the community? And it seems even those who communicate a lot, they could even do more and better, more clear, unambitious communication. I also picked this term, I think is critical, because of course nowadays communication is different and communication is not as hierarchical. Neither government systems are hierarchical, so we cannot always call for the big president come and help. Communication is happening very fast, and not everything is under control of everybody. So to look for this, the same with the volunteering. I think not only on the firework, but also the communities as the main volunteers. This capital cannot be underestimated, what communities do themselves, the energy they set up, and it is difficult but not impossible to plan with this energy in disaster and resilience strategies. And I think this is exactly also, technically speaking, one of the fascinating elements that disaster prevention and resilience planning has, that there is this energy of response. And I think it was extremely clear in our work with the fund Simone and Dondo have been giving. It's clear it doesn't need a big thing. It just needs a support to look, to communicate better. And the same, the La Palma shot of why it is always good to plan. No, I mean, in the end, there was no life lost, and we are all able to observe a disaster in slow motion. So and learn from it permanently. So thank you very much, the speakers, and thank you all the participants. We are here to be one more in the campaign, in the work to a more resilient world. Thank you very much, and be in touch, please.